Good morning. It's that time of year again that we are looking at summer and maybe what are our kids going to do during the summer. This is also we're getting into post-pandemic time, and the report is that a lot of people are thinking about transitions and those kinds of things. And so the issue that's come up for me again this year that traditionally does at this time has to do with jobs and work. And one of my primary recommendations for teenagers especially, but people kind of moving out of school and into the summer, is you need to look at the getting a part-time job. Part-time work in high school is actually linked to future vocational success after college. And so I want to be careful that people don't dismiss the part-time job as being insignificant or mindless or whatever. It's actually a very good thing to do and to engage in. And so, but this year, as I was talking about it, it got me thinking, and I'm doing some writing on this topic, just what goes into doing a job or applying for a job or getting a job. Because we kind of tell people, go get a job, as if it's a simple activity, and it's actually not. So if you're an adult who has a job, or a kid who's watching this whose parents want them to get a job, think about, especially the adult, think about how does one explain to somebody how to get a job. It's actually quite complicated, and you might not be aware of all the steps. In the same way, if you're a teenager, ask your parents for help or for guidance in this, and again, your parents will discover that it's actually complicated. So I went ahead and wrote down all the steps to the process and kind of described them. So indulge me a bit here. I want to go through this. This is a bit long, and I'm saying it both to be thorough, but also to kind of make my point that getting a job is not easy. Okay, so there's multiple stages of getting a job. First stage is what I'm calling preparation. So to apply for a job, you have to work out a lot of logistics and engage in planning. And I wanted to list some of the tasks that you need to do before you fill out your first job application. You need to decide what kind of job you want. You need to figure out when you want to work and how much you want to make. You need to figure out when you will be able to engage in the job application process. A lot of people are busy. Like kids are still going to school, so when are they going to apply for jobs? You need to update, or actually some people need to create a resume. Just about every job asks for a resume. You need to track down former employers and gather letters of recommendation. You need to write a cover letter. You need to figure out how to keep track of the process because you're probably going to apply for multiple jobs. You need to decide how you'll get to and from the job. You need to look at job openings. The list of activities could be longer or shorter based on your situation, but the point is that before you even fill out an application, there's a lot of work to do. That's the preparation stage. So the next stage, as far as I can tell, is the actual application stage. So once the preparation is sufficiently complete, now you apply to jobs. Some jobs have a formal standard application to complete, and others have a list of documents required for completing an application. It used to be the case that McDonald's, I don't know if this is still the case, McDonald's would have a big tablet of blank applications that would be under the counter. And so you would either go through the drive-through or actually walk into McDonald's and ask for an application, and they just tear one off, okay? Last time I applied for a university position, they needed a copy of my CV, which is like a resume for educators, and 3 letters of recommendation and a cover letter introducing myself. And sometimes they ask for copies of my scholarly work and any other supporting documents, okay? So there's a range, but the point is that the application is almost always a formal process. So, and it's standardized for most jobs. The application process must be completed fully and by the directions, or you should not expect to get hired for the job. It's just, at McDonald's, it used to be one page and you'd fill in the boxes and that kind of stuff, but if it was incomplete, forget about getting the job, okay? If they ask you for 3 letters of recommendation and you send 2, forget about getting the job. Many people completing an application at McDonald's tell me they intend to complete it in the store and end up taking it home because they don't have a required piece of information memorized, like their social security number, or they don't have a pen. So plan for the completion and submission of the application to take some time. Even at a simple single-page application, it might require 2 trips to McDonald's, okay? The actual application process is rarely ever simple and straightforward, um, or easy. So, and you have to do your best work at all times while completing the application and in that process, okay? So then we're into stage 3, which is the waiting stage. Some jobs are looking for someone to work them right away. Some have an application window with a deadline. Some jobs aren't filled until long after the application window closes. What happens to your application after it's submitted is usually something of a mystery. Needless to say, you should expect to see a description of the hiring process. For instance, an application deadline means no decisions will be made about the job until sometime after the deadline. Some jobs will post a start date, suggesting that the decision will be made before that time, hopefully. Why is this information helpful, you ask? Most people who want a job or want a better job, they want one right now. It is hard to know when waiting to hear about the bureaucratic progress is considered patience, like you just have to let things play out, or foolishness, like you may be waiting to hear from one application before you pursue another. So the waiting could be a good thing, a virtue, or it could really kind of get you in trouble. These days, I've noticed that more job postings state they don't want you to follow up on your application. It used to be the case, and perhaps it still is, that it was appropriate to follow up on an application once you submitted it. So I used to recommend people wait at least a week, but not longer than 2 weeks to follow up, and usually with an email or a phone call. And you would just say, I'm just calling or communicating to make sure that you received my application and to see if you have any more questions about my application. This activity is great because it can show tenacity or intentionality, or it's a chance to demonstrate soft skills like using formal and polite communication or being able to use emails. It used to be kind of a virtuous and good activity. This activity can also be seen as being pushy and unnecessary. And based on the fact that more and more job postings are asking people specifically to not follow up, it's likely that activity of following up creates a significant amount of additional work for people receiving the application. So during the waiting time, which is what you are in post-application, you should track the stage of the application. You should note when you expect to hear back and follow any up on and any follow-up that you have to do or plan to do with the application. So that's the waiting time. The next stage, a 4th stage, I believe we're on, I'm calling it the initial response. So you get a yes, no, or we need more information. These are the 3 basic responses you'll get after you wait after you've posted your application. The more information response is not a bad response because it's not no. It means there's something about your application they liked, and this is one reason that I coach people, check your email daily, and sometimes even multiple times a day. Sometimes you could see this is a test. They want to see, are you actually checking your email and going to follow up? So following up quickly is good because the person who gets the job ultimately is probably the one who follows up quickly. So if they're asking for more information, get it to them very quickly. In this stage, this is where if they're on the fence about you, this could push you into a yes or no category, is how quickly you follow up. A no response is unfortunate, but usually requires at least one more activity from the person. If possible, you should thank the company for something. In most cases, you thank them for looking at your application. They say, no, we're not interested in hiring you right now, and you respond, well, thank you for your time. Thank you for looking at my application. And people ask me, why wouldn't I just ignore that or tell them to go to hell or something like that? And it's because the rejection of your application, it's not personal. They're not rejecting you. They're not saying, you're a bad person. It's a company, it's business. They're saying we're going to hire somebody else and not you. So don't burn a bridge here. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who have applied at a company. They didn't get the job. They applied somewhere else. They got the job, and then 5 years later, they apply at that former company again, and they get hired. So don't burn a bridge, because the people that you're angry at could be your potential future employer. So respond in a business-like way. Again, this is a great opportunity to use formal and polite communication with somebody, even when they're saying no. So yes response is great, but it's also not the end of the road for you. There's still a lot of decisions to be made, and in most cases, and like with McDonald's, if you get a yeah, you're hired, you still got to go in and sign your employment contract and pick up your uniform. And in other cases, like in university positions, they say, we're accepting your application and we'd like to bring you in for an interview and for a job test, see if you can actually do the job. So that yes signals the next stage in the application process, which I'm calling they're interested. So a verbal offer of a job is just that. It's just an offer. It's not a job. And, the applicant has a lot more things that they need to do right now, a lot more things that could go wrong. Even at McDonald's, you could just not go in and pick up your uniform and you don't have a job. So some people have, like I said, there's a formal interview. I knew somebody who got all the way, we got all the way through the whole process up to this point, and they went in for the formal interview, and like their application was accepted. They went through all those 4 stages. They got to this stage, and they walked into the interview, and they sat down across from the person interviewing them, and they leaned back and put their feet on that person's desk. So this was immediately done. Okay, they got all this way, did that one inappropriate activity, and they were done with the job. So there's still an opportunity to lose the job in they're interested stage. So you have to perform another pretty complex set of behaviors at this point. The most traditional of that is the job interview, the in-person interview. So then there's the final stage. You get through all that stuff, and then there's what I call the closing the process. And in this stage, choosing one thing means you are not choosing a bunch of things. Like if you go to the store and you buy a Snickers bar, you're not buying a Twix or a Skittles or a Milky Way or any of the dozen options. They're all great options. They might even be better, but you're choosing this one job, and you're not choosing all of the other jobs. So in most cases, I'll say that this, for most people, getting a job doesn't really end the job search process, because people change jobs all the time, and not because they get fired, but because they're looking for better opportunities or those kinds of things. So this does greatly reduce the amount of energy you put into the job search, but the energy does not stop. So at some point in the job search process, it must change, especially if you actually get a job. But people, like I said, they do continue to update their resume and gain experience in those kinds of things. So and then I've known people who will just kind of annually go through this job search process because it benefits them in multiple ways. So the point of this kind of long video is I want to underscore the idea that getting a job is not some simple, flippant thing to do. Even at a place like McDonald's that has a tear-off applications, it's complicated. So if you're an adult suggesting that your child or somebody that you're teaching go get a job, you need to support this process. And if you're somebody thinking about getting a job or getting a better job, you need to plan accordingly, that this is a process. So thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoyed and benefited from this video.